viewers, as always, the most significant story here on India Upfront. Viewers, it's no longer a secret. It's all spilled out into the wider public domain. An ecosystem is engaged. An ecosystem is engaged in actively undermining India's democratic credentials. And viewers, they do this in the name of standing up and speaking truth to power. Viewers, it's all sanctimonious and preachy. But unfortunately, the rhetoric doesn't match the reality. Last evening on this show, we in fact talked about The Wire magazine and its alleged deep and dark forays into spreading disinformation, some claim by design. A design that The Wire's detractors say is indistinguishable from the sabotage India projects undertaken by urban Naxals and caviar communists. The stories that the portal had broken have now been retracted by it in the face of scrutiny that made it impossible, untenable for the editors to continue with. This alleged fakery seemed to suggest that the ruling party, the BJP and the NDA government had trampled dissent with a view to throttle India's democracy. The series of stories seem to suggest that on the one hand, Facebook Meta, I'm no fan of Facebook Meta, viewers, but this global behemoth had tied up with the head of the IT cell of the Bharatiya Janata Party, given him the equivalent of an digital magic wand to make stories that are detrimental to the government's image disappear of social media. He could block stories, they claimed. Viewers, another bunch of exposés earlier in the year seemed to suggest that the BJP had floated some kind of app. Very futuristic, all of this, viewers. And that this app somehow automatically targeted certain dissenters, especially female dissenters, with invective, foul invective. Tech Fog was the name of this app, this so-called app. And remember, viewers, that internationally this story became huge. The usual suspects, the New York Times, the Washington Post, who sort of specialize in picking up stories without perhaps doing any due diligence of their own, went out there, I'm told, viewers, from the records that we have, to spread these stories. But viewers, the alleged fakery has had some very harmful effects on India's image. A leading democracy watchdog called the Freedom House had relied on the Wire's stories to in fact downgrade India's standing in what they call the Freedom Index. Now, in my writings, viewers, I've exposed the methodology that Freedom House employs. It's very subjective. But nonetheless, viewers, half the world subscribes to its index, and this index measures the health of a democracy. So they take it very seriously. Today, the Prime Minister, in fact, commented on the harmful effects of fake news, calling out what he called were pen-wielding Naxals. He warned fellow Indians to not forward articles without verifying for themselves the facts. Mr. Modi's advice must be taken very seriously, viewers, and that's what he said. Social media cannot be underestimated. He went on to say, and let's press the click button, Nizam Bhai, on that. Yes, small pieces of fake news can create huge chaos. Need to educate people to think before they forward these bits and pieces of fake news. Single fake news can snowball into national concern. Need to defeat Naxalism, gun-toting or pen-wielding. So Prime Minister put out this advice and I said it must not be ignored. Let me tell you, there have been some very serious outcomes as a result of the rampant spread of fake news. There have been lynchings in different parts of the country over fake accusations circulated on social media platforms of child abductions. In recent times, certain news vendors have published grossly exaggerated figures of COVID death tolls to try and diminish India's efforts in fighting COVID, ruin the economic sentiment, prevent countries from investing. In 2015, viewers, another example, there was news being circulated by prominent news vendors, mainstream, that suggested that there was a Hindutva hand behind the vandalism of churches in India. A huge section of the so-called intelligentsia fell for it. They returned their awards in protest. The story became huge internationally. As you know, viewers, when Hindus are butchered, no one bats an eyelid. But when minorities are attacked, viewers, it becomes an international preoccupation to label India as intolerant. There's another example, and you might recall it. On Republic Day, a couple of years ago, leading journalists from a particular ideological point of view spread a calumny which had the potential of creating a rift between one community and the Indian state itself. News was wrongly broken to suggest that the Delhi police had shot in cold blood a tractor-borne farmer protester who, along with others, was marching into the capital against the Farm Law Bill, exercising his democratic right to protest. Viewers, that's very dangerous. An already roiled mob, as you know, viewers, went absolutely ballistic. They overwhelmed the Red Fort, pulled down India's tricolour, attacked physically policemen, officers of the law. Little wonder, therefore, that today the BJP, led by the head of its IT Media Cell, has decided to sue, for example, the Wire magazine for criminal conspiracy. In his words, Malviya said of the Wire reportage, and I quote him, "This undermines the democratic and informed choices that the public makes through a carefully calibrated campaign of disinformation and calumny, and does irreparable harm to the democratic right of dissent," unquote. Listen in to Malviya.
It is clear that the Wire and some unknown persons entered into a criminal conspiracy with the intent to malign and tarnish my reputation, deliberately inserted my name into a story and fabricated evidence to implicate me. This also undermines the democratic and informed choices that the public makes through a carefully calibrated campaign of disinformation and calumny, and does irreparable harm to the democratic right of dissent. On October 27, 2022, after scathing public scrutiny and the exposure of significant fabrication of dates, times and content in its alleged proof, the Wire publicly apologized to its readers and retracted the stories about M-Check and Meta.
Now, the BJP's Malviya spoke today, viewers, but he had announced his intention to prosecute the Wire yesterday. And on the back of that, the Wire put out a defense that some would say throws up more questions than it answers. Siddharth Talia joins me to dissect the Wire side of the story. Siddharth, the Wire came out and put out this defense, but there are some questions that linger.
Absolutely, Rahul. This statement had been put out by The Wire late last night once it came to be known that Mr. Malviya would soon be filing a legal case against The Wire, allegations of defamation and now criminal conspiracy as well. And this is how The Wire responded. It said in its statement, technical evidence is complicated and due diligence may not reveal fraud perpetrated upon us. So clearly they're claiming to be victims in this case of a perpetration of a hoax upon them. And that raises questions. And why does it raise questions? Here's why. If you've done your due diligence, as Wire claims that it does, why were fabricated videos and emails then defended as authentic? That's question number one. Why were manufactured expert opinions used to validate the concerned stories? Both these experts then came out in the public domain and said we had absolutely nothing to do with their authentication process. What else did The Wire say, Rahul? It said we spoke the truth when we realized we were given fraudulent information. So the moment it dawned upon them that the story might be fake, that's when they put out an apology. This is The Wire's claim. But the question that emerges is, why did The Wire persist with the story despite Meta's rebuttals? Remember that it took down the stories on the 23rd of October. That's when it retracted and then it issued an apology on the 27th. The stories had been initially put out on the 10th and the 12th. Meta's initial rebuttal came on the 12th. So why did you continue defending that story? The next question that emerges. Was The Wire also misinformed about the Tech Fox story that it carried way back in January, Rahul? If you've done your due diligence and there are questions then subsequently raised about story and its antecedents and whether or not you followed the due process before putting it out. You persisted with the Take Fox story as well and you eventually took it down on the 23rd of October, a full 9 to 10 months after the story had been originally published in Jan. Next. Why were Take Fox stories withdrawn 9 months after publishing? That's the point I just brought up. So you persisted with a particular story. There were several challenges posed to that particular story about its antecedents and its authenticity, and yet it took you 9 months to realize that something might have gone wrong. Next, the judicial process to decide whether or not a person was acting at someone's behest or otherwise. So here, The Wire appears to be leaving it out to our interpretation that there could be a conspiracy against it, that somebody might have been working at someone's behest to perpetrate this fraud upon The Wire. That was what they originally said. And that too raises questions, Rahul. Is The Wire in any position now to distance itself from this concerned reporter, which it has actually done in its statement? It says that this person perpetrated a fraud upon us. Are you really in a position to distance yourself when you backed the story all along before it was too late? Then, can The Wire actually prove that its suggestion that it was a victim of a certain conspiracy? This is where it's implying that it might have been done at the behest of somebody else, and the judicial process will verify whether or not that was actually the case. Next, if The Wire suspects subversion in this matter, which is what is implying, why not approach the police? If you claim that you've been at the receiving end of a conspiracy and the perpetration of a fraud as you claim, is the onus now not on you to go and approach the police in the same way that Mr. Malviya has done against you? That's another question. Right. Is The Wire playing victim to detract attention from the allegation of pulling off a hoax? Is it really the perpetrator of a hoax here, or can it really be playing victim? That's the other pertinent question that needs to be asked, which unfortunately the statement that it's put out, Rahul, simply does not answer. So those are some pressing questions that needs to be asked of The Wire over the latest statement that they put up.
So viewers, that's a breakdown of The Wire's response. Now, viewers, while Mr. Malviya is suing Wire for undermining democracy, there can be no denying that political parties, and we must accept this, that political parties and their spokespersons are equally guilty of influencing minds by putting disinformation out there. We all know that, viewers. Nonetheless, viewers, the media, especially the mainstream media, cannot absolve itself of the responsibility of not doing its own due diligence on these comments or handouts, or call them what you want, before that particular media house provides a platform to those politicians or anyone else. So even if someone was trying to stiff The Wire with some cooked up story, it doesn't absolve The Wire of doing its due diligence. Of course, in this case, viewers, that sounds ridiculous. Nonetheless, and because it didn't do so, this is where the wire self-admittedly has failed. The question is whether its well-known antipathy to the Modi regime in some way clouded its judgment, resulting in immense harm to the nation's image. That's the baseline question, and I want to open this up, and I want to first bring in the national spokesperson of the BJP, Shehzad Poonawalla. Mr. Poonawalla, I'll tell you what's going to happen. I'll tell you how this debate is going to unfold. You see, if it had been times now that had done this, we would have been taken to the cleaners. It's taken 5 days for the Editors Guild to come up with some sort of a pathetic excuse of a statement. Pathetic. It's absolutely lily-livered, viewers. Nonetheless, that's their choice. But had Times Now done this, we would have been taken to the cleaners. There would have been police cases, there would have been an inquisition, and I can tell you that people have written lengthy editorials for falling standards of Indian journalism and so on and so forth. Luckily, viewers, we've never done something like this. There might have been the odd mistake where material has been brought in by a correspondent without doing a fact check, and it's gone on, and immediately when people have raised the hue and cry, as they always do, calling us Radio Ravanda, etc., we put out a statement either explaining away the problem or admitting that there's been a lapse. We didn't wait months on end or weeks on end or days on end and try to reason it out and then, well, game the system by bringing up all sorts of experts and attributing statements to them that they didn't make and so on and so forth. You know the whole story now. So, Mr. Poonawalla, I'll tell you what's going to happen. This ecosystem that is feeling battered and bruised will come out and say that the BJP is making massive political capital out of this, that you're going out there to make an example of the wire, that you're going, you know, set Mr. Malviya out there to threaten all sorts of consequences. Now, can you tell our viewers why this is not the case? Why you are actually doing this? Because the problem is not with the reputation of Mr. Malviya, but perhaps with the impact on the country.
You know, the reason why this worn-out victimhood card can't be used anymore is because this is not an innocent act of a media organization getting a story wrong. Okay. There's nothing wrong in that. In a thriving democracy, media organizations are bound to get one of their stories wrong every now and then, and they apologize and they move on. But let me tell you, this is about a bunch of people who are history sheeters of disinformation, distortion and deliberate calculated lies. The Tech Fog story, the Amit Malviya story, the Pegasus story, the Nobel fakery, the COVID lies, and a bunch of entire list of stories. This is more of a calculated campaign of calumny, and I call it a part of an information jihad. There is obviously an Islamist jihad that's going on in the world, but let's not close our eyes to what I call as the information jihad, which is led by what I would call, and sorry for the play on words, the Jodi Media ecosystem. Now look at the telltale signs of this Jodi Media ecosystem. The common signs are that they always aim at undermining Bharat. There is an attempt to discredit Indian democratic institutions. You can attack Mr. Modi, you can attack Amit Malviya, none of those two are holy cows. But the idea is not to stop at Narendra Modi ji or at Amit Malviya ji. The idea is to discredit Indian democracy itself, to manipulate political discourse. There's one thing to go out there, fight an election on issues and win an election or lose an election. But to manipulate minds more like a Cambridge Analytica kind of exercise, and then to shame nationalists. Look at their entire discourse. It's not just about what they do, but if anybody else highlights an opinion which runs counter to their opinion, they are shamed as what was being called as the Jodi Media. So this is for so much for their liberalism or their idea to tolerate another point of view, and then to ally with those enemies of India who would like to amplify and exacerbate India's fractures and legitimize even acts of constitutional desecration, including separatism, and to also include those movements which would not find any space in a liberal democracy. Rahul, let it never surprise you that those who champion the causes of liberalism were suddenly backing the entire hijab movement. Now, one of these panelists who I share a family with, my mother in the 70s and 80s never wore the hijab and she's a practicing Muslim. But yet we were told that to be liberal, you had to have women don the hijab, whereas the entire world is seeing a movement against that symbol of patriarchy. And therefore, finally, let me tell you in one line that this is neither a liberal media, this was neither a free media, this was an organization of people, an ecosystem, an Islamic, an information jihadic system of people that were actually moving more on agenda than on facts, and today that has been called out, and therefore their victimhood card doesn't work anymore.
Well, viewers, now let me just tell you that it's not just the BJP that is questioning the credibility of The Wire and its work. Even The Economist, no fan of Mr. Modi or the government here, has come out with a piece, a column, in which the writer says that prominent Indian independent news site destroys its own credibility. The Wire's own goal holds lessons. And, you know, it just builds on this, and it talks about what's happening. He says the Wire's own goal holds lessons for opposition forces everywhere. And there are a large number of reasons why The Economist thinks that there was some amount of malafide here. So, Kevin Matthews, I just want to ask you, and that's the question that I began this with, did perhaps this portal's known antipathy to the Modi regime, its desire perhaps to, I don't know, the BJP claims they settle some scores, in some way cloud its judgment, resulting not just in an attack on the BJP, its governments, its spokespeople, but also resulting in, over a period of time, India's, and I'm saying India, the nation's credibility taking a beating because, you know, as Shehzad Poonawalla himself says, that there is a Jodi Media system that goes on. One does something, it is amplified, amplified, amplified to the point where it becomes a massive, massive story in huge section of the national and international media. That's the question I want to ask you.
See, Rahul, what happened here and what The Wire has done, that is absolutely condemnable. Let me say that to start off with. Wire made a mistake. They have come out with an apology, but there is a case, Mr. Malviya decided to file both criminal and civil suits and let it take its due course. But today this should rather, yes, I understand the media is supposed to be the fourth pillar of democracy, and while there are very few media organizations that have stayed independent, a lot of media organizations have followed a trend of taking sides, and this is not just in this country. So worldwide, the media has taken a trend of taking sides, taking political affiliations, and that is a bad thing for democracy as a whole. So let us today, because democracy is one of the world's biggest experiments, and for it to succeed, media staying independent is very important. And so today, I take this as an opportunity. This should be an eye-opener for all of us. And not just, it doesn't boil down to Wire.
I agree with you. Kevin Matthew, yeah. I agree with you, but I didn't ask you that question. Now, you have referred to, you know, the media taking sides, etc., etc. Of course, the Indian media has not gone as far as, and I actually advise the Indian media to wear its political affiliations on its colors, so that on its sleeves, so that the viewer knows why he's watching what he's watching. In fact, internationally, there are media houses that will endorse a president and then do a good job, viewers, of not only pushing that president's agenda, but also, for example, in the United States, holding the agenda up for greater scrutiny. That actually helps the system. And we've even seen it in the UK recently, Rishi Sunak, etc. You saw that whole battle. even those that were sympathetic to the Conservatives have held up each of the candidates to their manifestos. It has resulted. So I don't believe, Kevin Matthew, what you're saying about picking sides. I'm not talking about picking sides. As long as you're telling the public that, look, we are on this side of the fence, and when your side is committing mistakes, you can hold it to account.
Yes,
nothing wrong with
Rahul,
that. But my point is,
Rahul,
and my question was,
agree.
Mr. Matthew, my question, which you've very cleverly skirted, I don't know. I want to ask you this. Was there an intent to put out, and is this part of a series of a malign intent to target one party over others? And it's just that this time it went a bit too far. That's what I'm asking, Kevin Matthew.
Rahul, when you ask me about somebody else's intent, it's my guess is as good as yours is. So I cannot answer that.
Well, if I really told the viewer what I really think, the wire would sue me for the same amount that Mr. Malviya will probably be doing them, and I'll end up perhaps funding the wire when or if they end up losing in the courts to the BJP's national spokesperson. But one second.
But just one line.
Yeah.
All of these people who are now heading this ecosystem were on state largesse when the UPA government was around. So why are we giving them such big clean sheets of intent?
I don't know about that. I know that
they were hired by the national broadcaster. They got plum jobs, plum salaries. All
who are you talking about? Them? Name them.
Well, there are all of the worthies who appear on this particular portal, this Haywire Caravan of Lies.
Who are you talking about?
Have all been given plum postings, plum jobs at the time when the UPA government was there.
Serious charge.
It's all on record. Wasn't Mr. M.K. Venu a part of the UPA at the time, was not given a plum kind of a position or a job in that sense on the platform of
I don't know.
the national broadcaster?
Look, I'll have to this information with Mr. Venu. He's not here. 1 minute. He's not here. None of these people that you're mentioning are here, but nonetheless,
they all were hired by Rajya Sabha TV, which was run by the Vice President, Mr. Hamid Ansari and Gurdeep Sappal.
That's your point of view. I can't sit here and corroborate what I don't know. I'll have to have that cross-checked, etc. I'm not going to go that far, but that's your point of view, Mr. Poonawalla. Times Now is not underscoring any of this information. Well, let me just bring in Abhijit Iyer Mitra. Mr. Mitra, you know, you're a close observer of this, I don't know what to call it, ecosystem, you know, caviar communists, I don't know what to call them anymore. Many people use all sorts of epithets. They certainly won't use the word Radio Rwanda and, you know, the others that they use, North Korean media, etc., to describe this lot. But nonetheless, what do you make of this, Mr. Iyer?
Rahul, do you remember a few years back when the Galwan incident happened?
Yes.
I had come over with satellite imagery to you and shown you certain satellite imagery.
True.
There were all kinds of wild claims being thrown about by people who did not have a single shred of evidence. Unfortunately, we could not publish those images because I did not have the publication rights. So Times Now could not publish those images, but I think you remember very well when I came and showed you that entire spread of satellite imagery.
I do. It opened my eyes.
That was a great big nothing burger that was passed off as a major story. What it was an escalation. It wasn't an invasion, but it was passed off as a very deep. They've got 100 miles in. If they were to be believed, they were literally sitting outside the skirts at the outskirts of Leh. This all started off. There are 4 events sequentially of fake news that I want to mark out for you.
Okay.
We should not fall into this trap of just naming the wire out here. The entire ecosystem stands exposed out here. The wire is just a manifestation of it. Rana Ayub was the first in this lot. She had 690 odd tapes. Nobody has heard, seen anything of that even today. No proof has ever been asked for. Right? Do you remember the Hindu published NRAM published a 3-day series with a manipulated document that had all kinds of paperwork plastering on top of it, which nobody managed to call out except me at some point. And then finally they had to they didn't even apologize for the story. Do you remember? Then the 4th episode, because the genesis of this lies in the tech fog story. Do you remember what the basis of that tech fog story was? Screenshots. 2 screenshots and an alleged video of a hacking. Now I want to demonstrate to our viewers how this works. This is me claiming right now that as I speak, Rahul Shivshankar has hacked my phone. I am not touching it, but it is scrolling. Can you all see it?
Yes.
Because Rahul Shivshankar is using tech fog and he has hacked my phone and somebody is scrolling my phone. Oh my God, Rahul, you have tech fog. Times Now has tech fog. You have compromised me. This was the basis of that story. Now, all these left-wing clowns coming out and calling out the wire today, they were all sitting and literally genuflecting in front of those two people who wrote that bogus story, Devesh Kumar and the Ayushman call. Did they bother checking what? There is a fact-checking agency called Alt News. Did they, the owner of that agency, one fellow called Pratik, he goes on a podcast and literally says that this is an industrial level hack. He validated all of this. He validated that story. Devesh has a history. If they had dug, Alt News is fantastic at digging up people's tweets. He had posted on Reddit that he had gone, this Devesh Kumar had gone and manipulated and set up bots to game online Twitter polls. In spite of that, he was given a job. They did not check his precedents. Ayushman Kaul, the fellow who co-authored that piece, is the son of the personal physician to Gilani, the separatist leader. Okay. They did not check his these things at all. Sorry, Rahul, this is slightly long. Let me finish. News Laundry, which has suddenly discovered its inner conscience and come out against this particular story about Amit Malviya, I want you to go and check that they did a podcast, a subscriber-only premium content podcast with Devesh Kumar and Ayushman Kaul, where short of declaring those two as the Sakshat 10th incarnation of Vishnu and reciting the Vishnu Sahasranamam in front of them, they were literally gushing over them as if they were the next Bill Gates, Bob, whatnot under the sun. Right? Now, what has changed? Why is the Economist suddenly saying this about the wire? It is because Facebook provides both News Laundry and the Economist with lots of money. This is not their conscience talking, this is money talking. Let us even go to the technical press. There is a fellow called Pranesh Prakash who claims to do public policy and has co-founded a thing called the Center for Internet Societies.
Okay.
He decided to keep absolutely quiet about all of this. Remember, editorial silence is acquiescence.
Okay.
This is a man who claims to work in tech public policy, but he kept absolutely quiet.
But what's the point?
The Editors Guild, of course, is completely irrelevant because, technically my dog has more relevance in the public discourse than the Editors Guild does, so I'm not going to go into that. But remember, Ms. Rana Ayub, the originator of fabrication in this case, she wrote a long 1,000-word article in the Washington Post on tech fog and how she was being abused and compromised because of it. Will the Washington Post now apologize for all of that?
Well, let me tell you on that point. Now, see, look, I'm not going to underscore anything that, Mr. Mitra is saying. It might all be true, but since these people are not here to answer for themselves, Times Now just wants to make it clear that these are views that are being expressed by Mr. Mitra. This is a democracy and people can say what they want to. It is for these individuals to counter Mr. Mitra, and I can give them all the time on Times Now to do this if they choose to, or they could take up this matter with Mr. Mitra in another forum. That's up to them. I invite them right now to perhaps call in and speak to Mr. Mitra and counter him. But I just want to make clear that Times not underlying anything. But I do want to say, on the Editors Guild, and this is very serious, on the Tech Fog story, the Editors Guild said the latest instances of such organized trolling and harassment of women journalists outspokenly critical of the current government are revealed by the investigations done by The Wire, which laid bare an extensive and well-funded network built around an app, Tech Fog, which steals unused WhatsApp accounts to send out toxic messages to target journalists. The purposes of these deeply hurtful messages was to instill fear in them and to prevent them from expressing themselves freely and go about their jobs. And the Editors Guild also called for a Supreme Court probe into the Tech Fog app, the makers of it. The implication was, of course, it was linked to the BJP and its ecosystem. Viewers, today, the Editors Guild has not come out because the tech fog story became one of the deciding factors that Freedom House used to downgrade India's ratings on the Democracy and Freedom Index, viewers. Serious repercussions. Serious. But has the Editors Guild come out and said that we now call upon the Supreme Court to hold an inquiry into this, well, misrepresentation, which the Wire today has, I suppose, indirectly admitted to by retracting the tech fog story.
Rahul, can I finish?
So this is, yes, this is very serious. Yeah.
Can I finish quickly?
Yeah,
Rahul?
please. Yeah.
So this entire story, is a culmination of a whole decade-long campaign of calumny, as Amit Malviya put it, where there have been lies, and the entire proof has been, trust me bro, mere ko sab pata hai bro, I am a tech expert bro. So much for their tech expertise that all these public policy intellectuals who are all visiting fellows and senior fellows at all kinds of American junket shops,
Yeah.
till the Western technical media did not open their mouths about the inconsistencies in the story, none of these clowns came out to condemn this story.
Okay.
And when
So-
they did it with caveats in a very...
Okay, so you're saying this is an organized, orchestrated campaign of calumny. That's what it boils down to from your analysis, Mr. Mitra. Tehseen Poonawalla, how do you react to this very quickly?
Well, unfortunately, we are caught between, centrists like me are caught between the left loonies and the rowdy right. Now, what else do you say about the rowdy right and the government of liars that is today after the Wire, which made a bona fide mistake? Now, let me just give you evidence of why I'm saying this. In September 2018, in the state of Rajasthan, the Honorable current Home Minister of India, Amit Shah ji says, and I quote him, that we can make any news go viral. Now, the republic of rubbish of manipulating TRP so that they can be on top, the rowdy right that is doing, are they today saying that they are cleaner than everybody else? I think, and I agree with my friend Abhijit Iyer Mitra, that we need a cleaning down, we need a cleansing. I think the Wire has apologized. Amit Malviya has all the right to go to court. Investigations will subsequently prove whether this was bona fide or mala fide. But today, the person sitting here from the BJP, the government of liars after the Wire, they have no moral authority to speak. They have encountered the truth in this country.
No, are you making this political? Because the Congress actually tweeted the tech fog story. In fact, Rahul Gandhi did so. One second, let me just get the facts out here. Rahul Gandhi tweeted on tech fog and he called for an investigation. The Congress, large number of Congress national spokespersons said that this was very disturbing. The BJP was killing dissent. You know the repercussions. Viewers, I've told you, Freedom House, you may not agree with Freedom House, you may question its legitimacy, its methodology, etc. But to a lot of people, it does make a difference when they're making those important decisions about having diplomatic relations, boosting them, or investing in this country. So there are repercussions of this. This doesn't go free. Nonetheless, the Congress party today has not come out and said that, look, the tech fog we take back. We shouldn't have said that. We should have perhaps done our own due diligence. So I don't know. Viewers,
Derek O'Brien was going to take up the Amit Malviya story into Parliament. Now,
why
don't we have an apology from a member of Parliament?
So let me ask. Let me ask. Majid Hydari, no apologies to the public of this nation, no apologies to the government, no apologies to the people that you have maligned and the nation's image. No apology for that? Do they not need that? Or it's okay?
Rahul Sahab, since its inception in 2015, Wire has been a reputed media house and it has set
I don't
its
care
own
about all of
standards
that.
of
Ask you a
purity of
simple
news.
question. Do they owe an apology? Yes or no?
Sir, I'm coming to the apology. Yes,
no,
they
just
have come up with an apology
I
for
don't
a
want
digital. They have come up with Wire has come up with an apology.
It's not an
for a
apology to
digital
any of those
error.
people that
But
it has
what needs to
slandered
be
and
seen
maligned.
is who
Let me tell
planted
you.
the black
Let me
sheep
tell
in-
you. Let me tell you. No, actually, you know.
Sir, who planted the black sheep in the Wire house? That is my point.
That doesn't matter. No, hang on.
which
Are
is
you saying
benefiting
that the
BJP?
journalist, do you know the antecedents of that journalist? Let me bring in the CEO of Swaraj, Prasanna Vishwanath. Prasanna Vishwanath,
Rahul
I want to
sir,
ask you.
You are not giving me
I want to
30
ask you. No,
seconds.
Mr. Hydri.
You let
Look,
Abhijit
look.
speak
Don't
for
try
10
to
minutes.
today.
At least
Don't
give me
try
1
to
minute.
today defend the
You planted
indefensible
black sheep in
because
the
you have an
wire so
agenda.
that BJP gets benefited.
I'm
This is
sorry,
my
sir.
question to
There is
Shehzad
no
Poonawalla.
benefit to anybody here.
This even happened with Nidhi Razdan. We have seen journalists falling into these
Mere
traps.
bhai Hydri Sahab, the wire is admitted. What are we arguing about?
They have admitted, but they have said there was a black sheep. So
What black sheep?
The black sheep in that house.
The black sheep they gave space to 6 months ago. It took them 190 days to discover that this person was a Trojan horse, and on what basis are they slandering this poor journalist? Mr. Vishwanath, I want to come to you before I go to the big breaking news that is coming in. Yes, go ahead. Is this a defense?
No, actually, I think Devesh Kumar, I think he's a very strong ideological comrade and a very integral part of the wire, that's pretty much well known. And it's quite stunning the way that they are trying to ring fence themselves by possibly, making Devesh Kumar the perpetrator of this entire, it's basically a very blatant outright, I'm saying it with full responsibility, anybody who has a semblance of understanding of tech, this is just blatant fraud and fabrication, from screenshots being manufactured, from instances being manufactured in Facebook environment to, emails to, basically attributing to experts. This is blatant. Fortunately, I kind of follow the, news stories and journalism across the world, across democracies. I don't remember in the recent time anything of this scale being pulled off, a kind of a fraudulent work of journalism. Maybe there was this German newspaper, Der Spiegel, where one journalist was caught for filing few reports. But in that, there was no editorial involvement per se, actually. Here, let's also highlight the fact that several of the stories, even in this latest so-called investigative journalism, which kind of exploded in complete ignominy.
Okay.
It was written with the byline of the editor. The editor participated, and he was actually doubling down, tripling down every time when people were questioning the basic efficacy of this entire investigative story. So it's quite. I wouldn't be shocked. That they've identified Devesh Kumar and as some kind of a fall guy, but one thing is absolutely clear: this was a teamwork. Devesh, obviously now one of the editors, he was quite aggressive in the social media, almost passing off as a tech expert. And today, after this entire story has exploded, now he claims that he's a tech illiterate and he's been completely misled. Actually.
Okay, so that's an assumption that you're making, of course. Now the courts will decide this.
Rahul, I'd like to clarify actually, because I'm not sure how, since I followed this story very closely, we could sketch a timeline of what has transpired in the last 10 days. There was complete ownership from the editorial team that they participated in the complete creation of the story. So, there is absolutely, now that they are caught with this fraud and fabrication, I think all these...
Somebody planted a black sheep and you are not letting it get highlighted.
Okay, Majid Hydri, I suppose you'll now say that terror attacks that take place in your own home state are also carried out by planted jihadis that the NDA puts. In fact, actually, didn't they make that accusation? I think they made that accusation. I think they made that accusation and they made it with Pulwama. So we know where you're coming from. Now, hang on. We know where you're coming from. Tomorrow you'll say that... No, hang on. Tomorrow you'll say that Dawood Ibrahim was an RSS product who was actually given even a facelift by the RSS, implanted in Pakistan to actually carry out a malignant attack on India. And let me tell you, this is not out of, this is not out of some fiction, because the 26/11 attacks were attributed to the RSS. This is the reality in this country today. This. Now I want to quickly go across to some big breaking news, and I want Shehzad Poonawalla to stay on, because this is a complete overhaul of the digital landscape in this country, and I want to go straight across to Padmaja Joshi for more on this. Mr. Iyer Mitra will also stay on. Yes.
Rahul, very big news coming in. In fact, we've just learnt that the Government of India has amended IT intermediary guidelines and digital media ethics rules. And certain clauses have been added to these rules. And what are those clauses and what it means? In fact, Kanchak Gupta has just put this information out a second ago, where he says the Government of India has amended these rules. These rules, the amendment makes it mandatory for intermediaries like Twitter, Facebook, YouTube, Instagram to comply with the Constitution of India's provisions and India's sovereign laws. And how is that? Let me read out to you from this part of amendment that has been made. It says the intermediary shall respect all rights accorded to the citizens under the Constitution, including Articles 14, 19 and 21, which means that now all of these intermediaries, YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, etc., will be subject to Indian laws. The sub-rule 2, clause A, the following sub-clause will be substituted, and what it means, they will have to acknowledge the complaint within 24 hours and resolve such a complaint within a period of 15 days from date of receipt. What does it mean? That right now, suppose your handle is blocked or your handle is suspended for some time. You do not know who to go to. Right now, they are saying that this intermediary will have to acknowledge the complaint within 24 hours and will have to resolve it within a period of 15 days. So if your handle has been blocked on Twitter, for example, or your YouTube channel has been suspended, within 15 days, some kind of resolution will have to happen. Under the new IT rules, with grievances related to suspensions, blocks, like I just mentioned, can approach the grievance appellate committees. The intermediaries will have to comply with the orders of the grievance appellate committees. New IT rules are important and will have profound impact on intermediaries, making them accountable to users and Government of India. Marks the end of rules framed by big tech Raj, who see themselves above sovereign laws. So it will be the laws and the Constitution of India which will govern all of these companies and not their inbuilt mechanism. Back to you.
Now let me tell you, viewers, you see, and Padmaja, just to stay on, let me tell you, viewers, that all media companies, bona fide Indian media companies, have editors, and they're responsible at the end of the day for what they put out. But some of these big tech companies did not have that provision in this country. So if you had a problem, as Padmaja was telling us, with something that was said about you, if you were being targeted, maligned, falsely represented, you had no one to go to. You didn't know who to go to. In the recent few years, viewers, the Indian government insisted that if you want to operate from Indian soil, at least set up some sort of an office that we, or a post box, where we can communicate with you, hold you to the laws that govern the dissemination of information in this country. That wasn't the case. WhatsApp is the hotbed of all sorts of fake news. Many times you get up in the mornings, you read WhatsApp and you get convinced about something and you spread those WhatsApps all over and you know the consequences. But if WhatsApp needs to be, Padmaja, held to sort of account, you didn't know who to go to. There was no compliance officer till some months ago. There was no editor who could take responsibility for the crap that was on WhatsApp, etc. And I'm being a little impolitic here with my words, but this is a fact. Padmaja.
Yes, the thing now is, Rahul, a very critical thing is that now it is not going to be arbitrarily decided by the intermediaries themselves, but as has been said over here, it will be the grievance appellate committees, and this is very, very important. Let me read out to you the operative part over here. The central government shall, by notification, establish one or more grievance appellate committees within 3 months from the date of commencement of the Information Technology Amendment Rules. Each grievance appellate committee shall consist of a chairperson, 2 whole-time members appointed by the central government, of which 1 shall be member ex officio and 2 shall be independent. Any person, and this is very important for our viewers, if you are aggrieved, any person aggrieved by a decision of the grievance officer may prefer an appeal to the grievance appellate committee within a period of 30 days from the date of receipt of the communication from grievance officer. Right. And finally, the grievance appellate committee shall adopt an online dispute resolution mechanism.
So this is similar. This is similar to the intermediaries that govern Times Now. For example, viewers, you have a problem with Times Now, you make a complaint. That complaint is then looked at by the NBSA, etc., etc., that holds some sort of an inquisition. And in fact, the panel that is sort of set up usually is headed by a former Supreme Court justice. So you've had in the past. So now Padmaja, fundamentally, I want to open this up. Also, Tehseen Poonawalla is with us, and Mr. Abhijit Iyer Mitra is also here with us. This marks a fundamental change, viewers, because till now, digital outlets in this country, so the wires, etc., did not have this sort of setup. They could put out whatever they wanted to. They were not governed really by much, isn't it? Isn't that really what is happening? But many people will say, Mr. Poonawalla, that your government is creating an infrastructure by which it can harass all sorts of digital outlets tomorrow by saying, oh, this is fake, that is fake. Fake complaints can be filed, and huge number of these dispute resolution committees will be set up, and all that these platforms will be doing is appearing from one to the other.
Quite to the contrary, Rahul. First of all, no social media giant can become a law unto itself, a republic unto itself. And they follow American law in America, they follow European law in Europe. They need to follow and comply with Indian law when they are functioning in India, when they have a market in India, when they have subscribers and consumers in India. If you want the protection of being an intermediary under the IT Act, it's very clear that you have to comply with the guidelines and the rules that have been laid down by the government of India and by the law of India to get that protection. If you want to behave like a super editor, and then you want to claim the protection or the immunity of an intermediary, that doesn't work. And that regime of allowing yourself to be a super editor, arbitrarily decide that I will remove one post, but I will not remove a post of a young girl complaining of how her nude pictures are online. And you say that I will do it because I will decide. That's not how it works. You have to comply with the Indian laws. And if you want the protection and the immunity of the intermediary, you have to comply with these guidelines. In fact, this is helpful for these social media giants. They can get all the immunity they want, provided they function like an intermediary or a platform, not like a super editor. If they want to behave like a super editor, then they have to go and get a license for being an editor, like you have a channel, a license from the INB Ministry.
So 1 second, let me just bring back Padmaja and Abhijit Iyer Mitra. Padmaja, does this extend beyond these big tech companies to other digital players in India, domestic ones also, number one? Number two, any talk about whether some of these social media, big tech companies, platforms, etc., have also to now essentially unmask the bots? Has that also happened? Two questions to you.
That is not quite clear over here. Essentially what they are saying, this is more about grievance redressal, Rahul. In the nature of what would happen in a consumer court. They are basically saying that we are setting up these grievance appellate committees. If you have a grievance with social media, just like you're a consumer of any other product.
No, but does this only extend to social media and, YouTube and the like, or even Indian digital publications, etc.?
So far, it just talks about the intermediaries, which would mean the platforms themselves, which is YouTube, Twitter, Instagram, etc., which is the intermediaries. Remember, if I quickly may just take another 10 seconds. In the past also, where there has been some enforcement tried by the government, remember there were cases of women who had gone to complain saying that our morph pictures are being put up, we are being harassed, fake handles are being created. The companies had said we are just intermediaries and we are not governed by Indian laws, and that has been an ongoing tussle. Now this amendment comes in that light.
Abhijit Iyer Mitra, someone who's sort of a free speech, I won't say absolutist, but somebody who believes in the absolute inviolability of free speech, I want to ask you, are you worried that this might lead to the constriction of free public opinion? Number one. Number two, hasn't Elon Musk also declared, who now of course owns Twitter, that he would like Twitter to comply with local government guidelines also? So from that extent, it's not as if YouTube, etc., are on some other planet.
Rahul, see, I'm not a big fan of governments. That said, I would any day trust the government that I voted for to either promote or restrict my speech over some faceless American who decides that he is the ultimate authority and appellate authority, judge, jury, executioner, who I have neither voted for nor do I intend to pay a single pooty kaudi to. This is number one. Whatever the frustrations of the process in India, this is a system that we voted for. We democratically elected this government. We enacted this constitution, rather forefathers enacted this constitution for us. And I would much rather follow that than the kind of rules that these companies follow. Remember, that Section 206 or 203, I forget what it is that President Trump enacted in America, it literally gave these companies exemptions from the constitutional protections of free speech and things like that in America. They have essentially become tech East India companies. And East India companies are never benign. They are always malignant. So I would any day, I may not like Bahadur Shah Zafar, but I will any day trust Bahadur Shah Zafar over Robert Clive any day, every day, day after day. So,
well,
great. We have problems. These are our problems. We are not a perfect democracy. There is no perfect democracy. All democracies are flawed democracies.
Practical.
But I voted for it. I have lots of appeals available to me.
I'll leave it to this.
Kerala Court, High Court, Supreme Court, Appellate Committee, everything.
I got it. Well, that's one point of view, viewers. This debate is not going to end here. Remember, there will be people who will start questioning. It's happened in the past. This is not something that has come out of the blue. The government was thinking about this actively. It's now gone ahead and done it. I leave it at this, viewers.